Hi there, everyone. Parshat Shemini features a tragedy that is something so difficult at times to grasp or understand, or try to even put ourselves to understand what it's like to have been Aaron when his two sons, Nadav and Avihu, die on that day, the Yom HaShmini, on the first day that the Mishkan was in full action. And so we're going to read a story together now in the Midrash Tanchuma that relates to drinking alcohol in excess. And that's not really the message of this that we're going to take away from it, though alcohol use needs to be done responsibly. The Torah in this week's parsha talks about that as well, that the Kohanim has to be very careful about drinking on the job. And one of the explanations of what happened with Nadav and Avihu, connected to that prohibition of the Kohanim serving with alcohol in their system, part of that, the connection that's drawn is that Nadav and Avihu were struck down because they had too much to drink before they went into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and this is why God struck them down. So we have a story in the Midrash here that deals with alcohol. And the question is, what is this message? What do we take away from it as it relates to the story in the Parsha and as it relates to our lives? Let's read together. Hahu Talmida Dahava Chasid. There was a student who was a pious person. Vahavale Abba. And he had a father. Vishati Chamra Tuva. And he drank a lot. He was an alcoholic, the father. Each time he would fall in the marketplace because he was drunk and wasted, and he was like in the public eye. He was so drunk, people would come and hit him with stones and pebbles, and they were making fun of him. And they would call out to each other from behind him and they'd say, "Look at this drunk guy." This pious son saw what was happening to his father. He was an alcoholic, he was a drunkard, he was getting drunk consistently in public, and people were embarrassing him. The son was embarrassed. He was embarrassed about what his father was doing. V'shoel et nafsho lamut, and he wished for his soul to die. He was so disgraced and embarrassed by his father. Oh my gosh. B'chol yom omer lo. Every day he would tell his father. Abba ani ashager v'aviu l'cha lebeitcha mikol hayayin shemochrim b'medina. I will buy you. I will order and bring you every wine that they sell in this whole state. And I'm going to bring it to your house. Just promise me one thing. Don't go to the bar. Don't go to the tavern and make a fool of yourself and disgrace yourself. Right? You're going to disgrace yourself. You're going to disgrace me. I'm your son. It's embarrassing for me. V'hu omer lo. Okay? He said, fine. You bring me all the wine, I'll drink it home. And at least I won't embarrass you, and apparently I embarrass myself. Right? That's what it says here. He says, Cain, pam achat u'shtayim b'chol yom. And so he would say this to him once or twice a day, until one time, Ad Amar Aviv, his father then said one time, he kept bugging him. He said, okay, Cain, Shiyase Kamoshu Omer, we'll do as you say. Shelo Yelech Lishto B'Beit Hayad. I'm not going to go to the bar. I'm going to stop. V'chein asa echasid. She'ose lo b'chol yom v'chol laila machalu mishta. So what did he do? How did he help him try to emerge from making a fool of himself and of his child? So the pious man, every day, he would make him delicious food and prepared him delicious drinks in moderation. And what would he do? He would umiyashno b'mitato. He would put his father to bed. V'achar holechlo. And maybe he drank too much actually, and so he put him to bed. Why don't you just be drunk in the house? Or maybe you're not drunk at all. It's unclear from the story. Just you sleep here. Then I can go out. You don't have to embarrass me. You're in bed. One day it was a rainy day. V'yotze hachosid lashuk. And the chassid, the pious man, the son, went to the marketplace. He was going to shul. And he was passing through the marketplace on his way to shul, to daven. And there was one drunk guy just lying on the street. And it was raining, so and the puddles, the water was flowing in a way that basically the guy was lying in a puddle. And what happened? The drunkard is laying there, and young men and little kids were throwing stones at him. Sounds like what they were doing to the father before. And they were throwing clay in his face and into his mouth, and they were basically making a fool of this guy. When he saw this, the chassid saw this, as he's on his way to davening. Amar balibo, says, I'm not going to daven right now. I'm going to go to the later minyan. Eilech la'aba, he says, I'm going to go home to my dad. Va'avienu lekana, I'm going to bring him here. Va'arelo zehashikor, I'm going to show him this drunk guy. And I want him to see the disgrace that these young men, these kids are making out of him. And maybe, maybe this will get him to think twice about going to drink in public, in the bar, and to get drunk in general. And so he goes back home, he gets his dad, and he brings him there to show him the scene. And you would think that the old man, that the father, would look at this and go, this is what I look like when I'm drunk? I'm so sorry, this is disgraceful. I'm really going to try to stop. I'm really going to improve. I'm not going to accept what is my situation in life. I'm going to try to make it better. What does the father say when he sees this? Amar lo beno hachasid Abba, bishvil zeh karaticha. So before the father even says anything, sorry, I skipped a line, 1 second. Me'asaviv hazaken, what did the father do? Halach etzel hashikor v'sha'alo. The father goes up to the drunkard laying in the street in the puddle, and he asks him, Be'eze bayit shata oto yayin shaya mishtaker bo. Where'd you get that stuff? That looks, you smell like you've got the best wine in your system. And the son is beside himself. Amar lo beno hachasid, Abba bishvil zekraticha. You think I brought you here so you could ask him what wine was he drinking? Where did he get the wine? I was bringing here so you could see how disgraceful this all looks. I was trying to get you to see what this looks like, so that you would stop with the drunkenness. Amarlo, the father said to the son, Bini, my son, I have no joy in life, and there's no Gan Eden, there's no Garden of Eden, except for this in my life. I drink. That's what I do. That's my Gan Eden. Kishashama HaChassid, when the Chassid heard this answer from his father, halachlo b'mapach nefesh. He left with this bitter, broken spirit. Now, the question is, what do we learn from this? What is the connection to the Parsha? And what do we take away for ourselves? The Midrashic is teaching us a lesson as well as telling us something about the Parsha. And I think what we learn from here is that Aaron, when he experienced this traumatic loss of his two sons, he didn't just accept. Sorry, he didn't just accept that this tragedy that has befallen him. That's it is what it is. I can't change anything in life. I'm gonna be down for the rest of my life. But Aaron had the strength. He had the strength to know that part of life is falling and tragedy. Now, sometimes this is a very tragic situation of the death of a child. But Aaron found the strength within him to know that adversity is a part of life. And if we can face the adversity and understand and accept the difficult things in our life, accept it, really accept that this has happened. Accept that this is a part of the story of my life, as unbelievable as it may be. That it's the beginning of how we can cope with the tragedy. It's the beginning of how we cope to move forward with some sense of grace. And I think that this Midrash is pointing out how Aaron was able to move forward in his life. This must have weighed on him for the rest of his life. But he still kept on the mission of being the Kohen Gadol, as difficult as that might have been. To work in the place where he knew his children had died. Every day, that was his job, to go there. But he accepted that this is a part of his life. Unlike the father in this story. The father in this story, he couldn't accept. He couldn't accept that there is a way to move forward from drunkenness. That there's a way to move forward from always lying in the streets covered in who knows what, and rocks and pebbles that they're throwing at him. There's no better life than that. That's the Gan Eden. That's my Gan Eden. I can't do better than that. This is the life I have. He boxed himself in. Aaron didn't do that. He didn't let that tragedy, that negative moment in his life, it didn't let him stop himself from moving forward and making something of his life. The lesson from this story in the Midrash, for us as well, and we can learn this from Aaron, is that unfortunately, tragedy and sadness and loss and difficulties are inevitable in our lives. But even though it's inevitable, if we accept that this is something that is a part of a human being's life, it is the beginning of trying to then deal with it and cope with it and let it be a part of the story of who we are as we go forward, as painful as it sometimes can be. We need to be able to change, not like the father in this story, but to be able to say, no, there is a different kind of Gan Eden, a Gan Eden that we can strive for, that we will rise up to meet. May we all be able to succeed to do that, just like Aaron, to push forward and push through the difficult moments in our lives, and to do it with grace, as he did. Shabbat Shalom.